What's your carnal theory?
Hey there, you're listening to Carnal Theory, where we talk with experts from around the world to learn how taking command of our sexual story affects our personal wellness, sexual experiences, and relationships with ourselves and others. Hello, I'm Abba.
And I'm Amanda. Today on Carnal Theory, we're sitting down with Rachel Holt, a graphic designer from Sydney, Australia, with an affection for design that drives social change. Core to her work as a designer is her identity as a feminist. So she founded About Your Body, an illustration-based education initiative meant to empower young women through art and teach people the beauty of their reproductive systems. Hi, Rachel. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Hi, it's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Yes, thank you, Rachel. We're excited to dive into quite a few things. And as you know, and as our returning guests know, we like to kick each episode off asking our guest to present a carnal theory for us to consider. And this theory, it's intended to be something that might challenge a presumption or a perception that we have about something. And we'll use that as a launch pad in this conversation to chat about that for a bit and also about Rachel's work. And we'll revisit that theory at the end of the episode to see maybe even during the course of this conversation, our perceptions or presumptions may have shifted. So, Rachel, if you could kick us off and tell us what the theory is that you've brought for us to chew on a little bit today.
Yes. The carnal theory that I'm presenting is this. To truly reclaim our bodies from the patriarchy, we need to understand how our bodies work. And it does not serve us, nor is it necessary to be afraid of our bodies.
I got chills with that one. I really do. I love that. It packs a punch because it contains a lot, like an immense thing within just a sentence or two. And I was thinking that what might be an appropriate first question to kick us off with is this concept of the patriarchy owning our body or reclaiming our bodies from the patriarchy. That statement insinuates that we don't have a claim over our bodies at the moment. Can you expand more on what that means? Like, how, in what ways has the patriarchy taken our claim over our bodies?
Yes, that is such a good question. I believe wholeheartedly that the patriarchy has tried to convince people with a biofemale body, however, pretty much everyone as well, that our bodies are for them. And as listeners of your show probably already think, that's not true. Our bodies are for us. And the last thing that the patriarchy wants is for us to reclaim our bodies as people with a biofemale reproductive system, because then we will realize that we don't need them anymore, that we don't need the patriarchy to function, that we're perfectly capable of functioning on our own. And in fact, I would say that the patriarchy has been detrimental to our society, but that might be going a bit far. So the patriarchy has really taught us to be afraid of our bodies, and they're keeping a hold on us, or they're trying to keep a hold on us by keeping us locked in this fear of our bodies and our sexuality. And I have come to realize that the only way to escape this prison of fear is to unlearn what the patriarchy has told us and to learn the real truth about our bodies. And what I mean by that is that when we're at school, and even before we go to school and after we leave school, the female body, or I should say the biofemale body, and by that I mean just anybody who has some or all of the female sex characteristics, like the internal organs like the uterus or the genitalia like the vulva, anything of that sort, some or all. We're all put into this same boat of like us versus them. There's like people who don't have that and people who do have that, and the people who do have that are seriously disadvantaged when it comes to patriarchy. And at school, we're taught to be just absolutely terrified of our bodies. And through my own experience as a woman, just going through like minor gynecological issues, I realized that I was absolutely terrified of my body. I was terrified of giving birth, which I haven't done. But when I one day will hopefully do that, I want to feel ready and prepared, and I don't want to feel absolutely terrified. We're definitely taught to be terrified of having sex. There's that like myth that your virginity is like just something you have to get over and done with losing. That's like, it's just something you have to go through just to benefit the man that you're probably having sex with. And I think that's an incredibly harmful way of looking at life. And that's the kind of fear that I'm talking about. When we're taught at school about our bodies and our sexuality and our quote unquote virginity, you're shown images of the body and videos of the body that are just like terrifying. Like they are like full on videos of a uterus being like cut open and a baby spilling out. Like that is disgusting. Like I don't want to see that. Like that is for a doctor's eyes only. That is not for the 12-year-old. And I think from the moment that we go to school, we're just taught that like, oh my God, the female body, biofemale body is so scary. And it's really hard to break out of that. The patriarchy just keeps us in this like chokehold of fear in that way. And I think especially with regard to virginity, actually, and especially with the concept of the hymen, that like you've got to break your hymen and you're not a virgin. And if your hymen is already broken, like that's a lie. And so long answer, but with About Your Body, I'm trying to break down those myths and taboos and get people to reclaim their bodies and empower them by understanding that your body's actually amazing. And it's not scary. The patriarchy wants you to think it's scary, but it's actually so cool. Like even your period, something that is like objectively really annoying, is really cool. It's a really, really cool concept. And what your body's actually doing is astounding. And like, I feel lucky now to have a biofemale body, whereas I used to feel ashamed.
I love that. How can you describe for the listeners what you are doing on your platform?
Yeah. How
you're achieving that?
Yeah. Yes. So About Your Body is essentially, it's just an Instagram page, but at its core, it's an educational initiative, and it exists at the moment just in the digital space. And it focuses right now on educating people about the female reproductive system through illustrations. So it's purely just all my work as an artist, and I am a graphic designer by trade. Like my full-time job is freelance graphic designer. But I started About Your Body because I started it as a response to the lack of adequate sexual education and health education in Australia, let alone around the world. I have people from like Texas DM me and be like, oh, sex education is not even mandatory in my state. And to me, I'm like, what? Sex education is not mandatory? What do you mean? Like, where do you get your information from? So About Your Body is really just a page of illustrations about of the biofemale organs, biofemale reproductive organs specifically, and outer organs as well, including mainly, I would do a lot of work on the vulva, drawing them in like a really non-threatening way. They're not realistic drawings. They're more like a diagram, and using non-threatening language to break down the complex information in simple terms and simple illustrations. And I want to make this information accessible to everyone. You don't have to have a university education to understand the posts on About Your Body. Because if you look up something online, I feel like I have to look up every second word to understand like what the medical terminology means. But I don't use medical terminology usually. It's just like really basic language and really basic and simple illustrations to try and convey that information.
I really appreciate how you're describing that. And I love the use of non-threatening. I feel like that's, I don't think we've ever labeled as that. I think that's exactly what we try to do too, is like that, breaking it down. Yeah. The relatability. Yeah. The non-threateningness. I love that. Was there
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. Was there a breaking point or something specific that happened that made you say this needs to start?
Yes, there was. So I think for me, it was, I actually have about this much on the page, but I'm about to start doing short videos, and I will be talking about it. So this is like a little sneak preview.
Woo-hoo.
Is that I was always terrified of my body, and I always had a lot of pain. I have a condition that's called vaginismus, which can be fixed or fixed. Is that the right word? I don't know. Helped.
Maybe it is.
Yeah. So vaginismus is where the body, the muscles of the vagina are like incredibly tight in response to a psychological fear that could come from absolutely nowhere or could come from something that happened in life. So it could come from a traumatic experience. And in my case, it didn't. I actually didn't have anything that happened to me. I just had some really tight muscles that cause incredible pain. So, when you get to the stage where you have your period and you start to use period products, I realized that I couldn't use a bunch of them because my vagina was broken, was how I worded it at the time, which is super damaging language. And I wouldn't recommend anyone think that any part of them is broken. And so I was looking up a lot of stuff about it. I went to a bunch of doctors asking for help and assistance and how to recover. And like the recovery journey did start, but I realized that there was the whole point of my body having this reaction to any touching of the muscles at all was based around fear. And if I had somebody to teach me when I was young with really, really simple, cute illustrations, that's kind of how my illustrations are often described, cute, because they're like all pink, I think is the main reason, is that people love pink. People just love it. And if I had something like that when I was growing up, oh my God, I would have been so much more confident in understanding how my body worked. And when I was trying to understand my body, I was looking up all of these images, and you would look up like vaginismus, and it would come up with this like literal photo of a tight vagina. And it was like, no, I'm not ready to see that. Like, I'm traumatized enough as it is. That is not helping me whatsoever. And because I was trained in graphic design and I didn't know at all what I wanted to do with my life, and like I still don't, I just thought, oh, I could do those drawings. Like, what if I did those drawings? If I'm talking about how I wish somebody would do drawings that were a bit nicer than this, I could do that. And so About Your Body for me, I think why it means so much to me is because it's been so important in my own understanding of my body and my own deconstructing the fear around my own body. Like, honestly, until I started About Your Body, I was absolutely terrified of it. And slowly that's just breaking down. So breaking down the stigma for myself as well.
Yeah. It's a really good place to start.
Pretty good. I feel like there's a lot of things you've said so far that really resonate, especially with this fear-based education. And I think for myself, a lot of fear also comes with the unknown and not having the information I need to understand and like make good choices for my body. In January, so I guess this month, because it's already January, holy cow.
Let's not talk about that, actually.
Yeah. This month, we're talking about abortions, which is a topic that can be really hard for people because we are all taught this in very different contexts. Or not really taught about it at all. And for myself, I had an abortion about a year plus ago, a little over a year ago. And I think what was so difficult was I had no idea. Like, when I went to the clinic and was like, they were asking me if I had any questions. One of my questions was, so like, what are you gonna do to me? Like, I had no idea like what was going on, like what the procedure was, what my options were, anything. Like, I didn't know anything. And I was like, can you just tell me like what an abortion is? Like, what are you going to do? And so I think what I'd love to hear from you is like, what's the importance about, like, why does it feel so important to teach these things? For me, I think the fear goes away, but do you feel like that's kind of a universal thing, or is there other reasons why this information, I don't really know if I'm phrasing this in like an accurate way.
I think I know what you mean.
Like, what power does like are there other powers that this ends up giving?
Yeah, like what is this information like giving us? Like how is it helping us reclaim our bodies?
Well, actually a few things. For starters, well, I think a few things anyway. Let's see if you agree. For starters, isn't it just a disgrace that we don't talk about abortion, I always say to people, you think you don't know someone who's had an abortion, but you do. You think you don't know someone who's been sexually assaulted, but you do. You just don't know that that's happened to them. And same as when people say, like, I don't know any queer people. Queer, I don't know if you use the term queer in America, in Australia. Yeah, okay, perfect. Somebody the other day was like, oh, I haven't heard that term. And I was like, oh, I better correct myself, explain what that means. It's like if somebody once said to me, I think they actually said I've never met a gay person. I was like, that is just not true. You just don't know that you've met a gay definitely met a gay person before. So I think of abortion as something like that. Perhaps I'll start generally, and then I've got some stuff that I think is interesting on abortion as well, and the knowledge of that. Yeah. So understanding your body eliminates the fear surrounding it. Like you said, the fear goes away, and I think that's awesome. But I'm not actually convinced I'm not sure if the fear goes away on its own, or if you have to experience things to make it go away. I guess what I'm trying to do with About Your Body is prevent that fear from occurring. I'm hoping that young girls and young bi-female people will look at my illustrations one day, maybe when I get a bit bigger, and see it and then never feel afraid about their body. I feel so sorry for all the 8-year-olds who feel as scared as I did at that time. And I should point out, actually, that my parents are doctors. So I knew heaps about the medical system for like just a layperson, and I was still terrified. And what I think that the elimination of fear does to our psyche, and like why it is so important, is because I honestly guarantee once you learn how amazing your body is and all of the things it can do that are really good, you are far more likely to feel empowered in yourself, confident in yourself, and realize the benefits that your body brings you as well. So, childbirth, that's so painful. Like, why do I have to go through that? Good question. I'm not really sure why it's so painful. It just is. But isn't that amazing? Like, I can push like a baby out of my body. Like, that's so cool. And I think that learning to be empowered is how I'd word it. I don't think we come out of the womb just like super empowered and proud of ourselves. I think we have to learn it because, like I said, the patriarchy has tried to push us down for so long. And
we do come out pretty empowered, and then it's like drilled out of us.
Yeah.
Slowly.
That's more accurate. For sure, yes. I bet if I could think when I was like 1 day old, I'd be like, I'm a bad bitch. Like, I am so amazing. Yes. But then by the time I'm 12, I'm like, I'm literally pathetic. Like, why am I the way I am? Your perception changes so much. And that happens to everyone. But for people with female sex characteristics, it's just a whole other level. And your worth is determined by your sex life and your virginity, and how if you have sex too early, you're a slut, and if you have sex too late, you're a prude. And it's like, well, you literally just can't win. So I digress. But I think the reason it's so important is because you honestly start to have a more positive mindset, and that will make you feel so much more empowered. And when it comes to abortion, or when it comes to actually anything healthcare, my aim is to raise awareness. And I think that a lot of my friends who don't do this kind of line of work, their aim is also to raise awareness just through speaking, and mine just happens to be through visuals, and breaking the silence around that. And at the end of the day, no matter what your goddamn opinion on it is, abortion is healthcare. Like, that is not negotiable. Abortion is healthcare, and it needs to be talked about. I'm quite passionate about this. It's very frustrating. In Australia, in the state that I live in, abortion is actually legal up to 22 weeks gestation, so that's pretty good. But in a lot of places around the world, we're not so lucky. Yeah. And I guess what I think of is that contraception is absolutely key to people's empowerment. The right to choose when you have a family, when you have a baby, or to not have one at all is like literally your chance to live life to your fullest potential. Like, that is so incredible that we have that option, and I do feel very, very lucky to have that option. And what I want to hone in for listeners is that abortion is a form of contraception. It's just contraception at the latest stage. And if you're educated on your options as well, your options about medical abortion, surgical abortion, etc., you have more space to think about what you actually want for your life, rather than you have a short window between when you get pregnant and deciding to have an abortion. You don't have much time to decide that. And maybe you know that that's what you want, but you don't know how to go about it. So then say that period is like a week. That's just a made up time frame. You have a week to think about, oh my God, what can I do? Can I afford an abortion? What is an abortion? What's a medical abortion? Is it too late to have a medical abortion? All of these questions. And if you know those answers already, then you have just more space to grow. Your mental well-being is so important. And I definitely think that, you know, in Australia, in some states, you do need to have a quote unquote reason to have an abortion. And I think that that's incredibly stigmatizing, because I think not wanting a baby is like reason enough to have an abortion. Like that's a reason to me, not, oh, I had a baby with, I've fallen pregnant to somebody that I'm not happy with. You shouldn't have to explain that to anyone. Like that's no one's business but your own. And where was I going with this?
Abortion is healthcare.
Yes, abortion is healthcare. Thank you. By requiring a reason, I think it implies that your mental well-being is not important, and your mental well-being is so. I cannot even explain how important your mental well-being is. And so that all circles back. If you understand your options, your mental well-being is like far more likely to be lifted up instead of you feeling constantly overwhelmed with the information that surrounds you. Does that sort of answer the question?
Oh my God. I love that you're highlighting the importance of contraception and abortion is healthcare. Like I totally want to make that one of our tiles and put you as the quote for this month. You know, like that's such.
I didn't make that up. We'll
yeah, but you know, you've highlighted it, and that, I mean, like, you know, that's something that needs to be on like a Times Square ad. Like that really needs to, because it needs to get like it needs to become a more mainstream thought. The fact that it isn't. And, you know, Argentina just got their rights to have legal abortion, just legalized abortion at the very, very end of 2020. And it's been huge for them. Just, you know, years of fighting and protesting and struggling with that. And the fact that it's not a right and that it is this something that has to be so struggled is just insane, because it's healthcare. It is.
I totally agree. And that's what I think that's that line is actually a pretty good line. So thank you. You're welcome.
Yeah, it is.
That line is a pretty good line, because, you know, obviously I am of the opinion that nobody should be forced to have a baby. But even if you think that abortion is wrong, I can understand why someone might think that. Abortion is still healthcare. Like, even if you think that, doesn't change that.
Exactly. Exactly.
It's not something people do for fun. I don't know where that perception came from. No one does that for fun. No. That's just not true.
No. I think that what you're saying is so true, though, that no one talks about it. That people are... When I was going through it, I didn't know a single person who had also gone through it. But it's just that I didn't know, and like no one had been open about it. Because 1 in 4 women are going to have an abortion in their lifetime. And so like that's 25% of all womb owners on the planet. And there's just no way that I didn't know anyone, but there's no one talking about it. And so people feel like they can't talk about it. And so like, it just feels like we need an entryway. We need people to start speaking up about their abortions in order for those who are going to go through it to have the knowledge, but also like not feel so isolated in this. Like you're not alone in this experience.
Yes,
it wasn't a question. It was just a statement.
Yeah, no, I just really feel for you that you didn't think you knew anyone, or maybe actually didn't know anyone, but at the time didn't know anyone who had that happen, because I have felt the same way with many. Anything gynecological, I feel like that's the approach that I take. I'm like, oh, I'm the only one going through this, but I'm not.
Yeah.
I'm definitely not.
Totally.
And I think, you know, there aren't too many aspects that are coming to mind in our lives. Please chime in if you think of any. But I'm not thinking of too many things that we go through as humans where when we don't talk about them, it helps ourselves and society. Like there's plenty of instances where both, people don't need to be in our business. People don't need to know everything, every detail about our lives. Like there's plenty, that there can be triggers that are set off in discussing these things. Like let's like put that off to the side and separate out the times where like it would be harmful, or like it needs to be in a really safe scenario to talk about these things. But like think about like what we eat and like health choices, or like driving properly and wearing seatbelts, like different safety features that like we talk about and like put out PSAs about, and even laws that encourage people to like do these things for your safety. Like we don't talk about contraceptives and their use. We don't talk about these safety measures. We talk about car crashes. Like we talk about like, here's, bad things when people don't drive safely. Like we don't benefit from not talking about this. It's by raising awareness about things, like whether you consider them good things or bad things. It's when we talk about stuff and put out awareness about it that people both, like, first and foremost, have like the potential to have an informed decision to be able to make their minds up better or not, like whether they want to wear the seatbelt or not. And then like, yeah, just to understand like the full repercussions, like how can we be making good decisions when we don't have a full viewpoint? And contraceptions and abortions and these things all fall under that. Like who thinks that we're making good decisions when we don't have information? Those two things don't go hand in hand. I'm trying to get at, like, I can't think immediately of like any other part of life where like we go, by withholding information, people make better decisions.
I personally can't think of any. I think there would be some, but I can't think of any. I can't think of a single situation. And with healthcare, it's been proven bloody time and time and time again that education is so paramount. I love what you said about informed decision making. That's so important. And I don't know about in the US, correct me if you've got any counter views, but definitely in Australia and certainly in the UK as well, we're put on contraception, like young people are put on contraception, not willy-nilly, but like without being told why they should be put on contraception. So I think I got put on contraception for the first time when I was like 15, and I wasn't having sex then, so I didn't actually need the contraception, but my skin got bad and they were like, oh, let's give you a pill to fix your acne. And maybe the pill would fix some people's acne. It did not fix mine. That is still a struggle that I face today. But that would have been great if it had fixed my acne. But you get this, the contraception, hormonal contraception, I should say, not things like condoms or actually most contraception is hormonal, but not things like condoms. Most contraception drastically changes your hormonal profile, and that's okay. I am now on a form of contraception that does drastically change my hormonal profile, but I'm aware of that, and that's what's so important. So when I was on the pill, for example, I think I was taking the progesterone only pill for about 3 years, and I was depressed, and I've never been depressed before. And I was like to the doctor, I really think this pill is making me depressed. And they were like, no, the pill doesn't make people depressed. That's not a thing. I was like, okay, I guess it's not that then. The case closed.
Because you're the doctor, and so you must be right and know what you're talking about.
And you're a man. And then
I'm not.
And then one day I'm like, pardon my Australian language, I'm like, fuck this. I'm coming off the pill. I'm so depressed. And I know it's this because I was not depressed before I started taking it. And my depression was cured, funnily enough. And I've had so many people have the same situation. Like so many of my friends have a similar situation. I mean, the way I told that story is like I'm missing a heap of information, but that's the general gist. And what's important to know is that contraception really does change how your body works. And that is awesome because it means that you don't have to get pregnant if you don't want to, if as long as it works, which most of the time it does, not always, unfortunately. And that's freaking amazing. I'm so grateful for contraception, but it's so important to know, what you're putting in your body. And I think sometimes when I say that, it can be misconstrued as like, oh, Rachel doesn't agree with contraception. I fully agree with contraception. I'm on contraception whether I'm having sex or not because I don't want to take the risk. But it's important to be aware of like what's going into your body. My favorite book about this is called This Is Your Brain on Birth Control by Sarah E. Hill. Is it called This Is Your Brain on Birth Control? I'm pretty sure that's what it's called.
It's a great title. It's not.
Yeah, I think it's called This Changes Everything. This Is Your Brain on Birth Control. I've read it. Okay, I promise. And it's fantastic. And she just goes into all of the ways that your sex hormones just change. There's hormone receptors throughout your entire body. And why I'm bringing this up is because when you have an abortion, that is a hormonal shift that goes through your body. So kind of like the thing I liken it to is when you're about to get your period and you're going through premenstrual syndrome, you'll probably feel like really sad for no reason, but like nothing's wrong. You're crying over like a TV show that nothing sad has even happened. That can happen to a lot of people when they have an abortion. And it may be a real feeling of sadness. It may be a real feeling of guilt, anger. It could be anything, but it also is likely to be a hormonal shift. And because we don't talk about that, I know a lot of stories of people who have had abortions and felt just horrible afterwards, and no one's warned them that they're actually likely to feel that way. And at least if they just knew that they were probably going to feel that way, then it wouldn't be so distressing at the time. Like, it's always better to just know that something might happen to you, and then it's less distressing for you. It doesn't cause quite as much anxiety. And I really wish we talked about that more.
Yeah. Huh. I didn't even know that was a thing, and I went through it.
Yeah. Well, I suppose it doesn't happen to everyone. Totally depends on what your hormone levels are like, but it is like quite likely to happen. Yeah.
It's like depression after having a baby. You know, some women experience that.
Totally.
Some women.
Oh, it's exactly like that. Yeah, that's the exact, perfect analogy, actually. That's a better analogy than the period one.
Well,
you get your period every month.
Yeah, but still that resonates differently with different people for sure.
Yeah.
I haven't had a baby. I think that's why I use the period analogy.
Yeah, fair. No, that's some very, very strong and well stated points.
Yeah,
for sure.
Oh, thank you.
And I think Amanda would agree, but the same in the U.S. They'll throw birth control at you. For any reason. Oh, your arm hurts? Oh, we can fix that.
Birth control.
I was put on birth control. I had like really heavy periods, so that's why they put me on birth control when I was like 15 or so. Maybe 6. No, I didn't. I like 17, I guess. And also same in the US in terms of like every state is different when it comes to abortions. Every state has like different, it's technically legal everywhere, but there are some states, significant amount of states, in which they do their best to make it nearly impossible to get one because of various like religious and political powers and the patriarchy, and and it's like you have to prove that like you are at like your health or life is at risk to get one, or it's just not covered and it costs a lot of money and you can't.
You guys don't have healthcare.
Right, correct.
Yes. Oh, I forgot.
Yeah.
Sorry.
We have terrible healthcare. Yes.
You don't have any healthcare? Oh, wow.
We have universal healthcare, or not universal healthcare. We have Obamacare, which is like, for as an example, like I am under a certain income bracket, so they give me like a stipend to go towards my payment of my healthcare, but I have to like find private healthcare. Yeah, there's no like government. We're
very well protected, but like it's like our borders, not our bodies.
Yeah. Our land is really well done.
Does that make sense? If we could just translate that, that'd be really good. Yeah.
Yeah, there's like this like military thing that's like preferred.
Yeah. It's pretty wild.
They pick fighter jets over our minds.
And our bodies and our minds, our education. Like so many so many budget cuts to our education and so much more money given to like things like military and etc.
Yeah. Looping. Go ahead.
Oh, all I was going to say was that we do have sex education in Australia, but it's just, I would call it inadequate.
Yeah. About the same.
Well, here it doesn't even have to be fully factual, so that's also fun.
Yeah.
Oh, great.
Yeah. Only a few states make it a requirement that the sex ed is factual.
Yeah. So options. I want to loop
That
back.
blows my mind.
Yeah, right? Like, why? It's like teaching a history class with like fake history. I want to loop back on the patriarchy.
Yeah.
I'm wondering, I'm curious if you have thoughts and opinions on how women support the patriarchy, essentially. Like, how or why do you think this hasn't been ripped apart yet? Because I even think about, like, when we're talking about abortions, I even think about like people who hang out outside abortion clinics, and like a lot of them are women identifying, you know, like it's not just men who are filled with hatred that are out there trying to get women, you know, force women to have these babies, like, and like, do you know, brainwashing levels, like, or like, curious what you think.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It is often, it's not only men who are standing outside those abortion clinics, and it's not only men who bring other women down. So I used to be that girl that was in high school that was like, I hate that bitch. She's so nice. Like, what was I thinking? I don't want to bring other women up. But the patriarchy had taught me that there's only so many, there can be only so happy women in the world, and there can be only so many successful women in the world, and empowered women as well. And when I say women, I mean anyone who's woman identifying, of course. But I actually have come to realize that that's not true. That just because your friend is happy, like just because she's in a happy relationship doesn't mean that you also can't be in a happy relationship. And just because your other friend is single and happy doesn't mean that you can't be single and happy. And I think that extends to the concept of virginity and anything to do with abortion, for sure. There is a lot of shame surrounding. Actually, there's a lot of shame of even, I think, being on the pill when you're in high school. It's like, oh, she's on the pill. What a slut. It's like, what? She was on the pill because someone put her on the pill. And also, slut is a social construct. That's stupid. Let's not use that word anymore. But in high school, I used words like that. When did I graduate high school? I think maybe 6 years ago, maybe 5 years ago, I graduated high school. And seriously, until my first year of college, so at university, which at the time I was living in a college dorm, which is like not very common in Australia. Most people don't do that. I realized that I just hated girls because they were having sex and I wasn't, and I wanted to be having sex and I was jealous of them, and that manifested into bringing other people down. With regard to abortion, I mean, Australia is a secular state. And it is. Our Prime Minister at the moment is a devout Christian. However, he is like not allowed to put that into policy. We don't have policies generally. I don't know. We're secular-ish. We're supposed to be secular. We're not a Christian nation is what I mean. But I know people who are Christian, and I'm Christian myself. I know people who are Christian who are actually probably what you would consider pro-life, who don't consider abortion to be okay, but they still support people who have them. So they wouldn't go outside to the front of an abortion clinic and picket, I guess is the word you might use, to use a Westboro Baptist Church term. Yeah. You wouldn't stand outside and tell people that like you are sinning because you are having an abortion. I wouldn't do that because I actually don't think that is quote unquote, I don't tend to use the word sin, but like I don't think that having an abortion is wrong ever. I don't think it is ever wrong. I'm like 100% pro-choice. But even if you think it is wrong, it is a whole nother level to like go outside and make those people who are in those abortion clinics feel unsafe. And if you really think about the teachings of Jesus, does that go? Is that what Jesus would do? No.
Washing their feet, helping them out, doing whatever needs to go out. Yeah, like no.
What does Jesus say? Whoever has not sinned may throw the first stone.
Yes.
Like, let's not pretend that you all haven't done bad things in your life. People standing outside abortion clinics, maybe do some self-reflection is what I'd say to those people. So I think people can get, I wish I had a clear-cut answer to the question. I think that it is a bit of brainwashing from the patriarchy, but I also think that it stems down in all to women not being taught that if we rise up together, we can make change. But that's been proven time and time again with the suffragettes, etc. But I think we still have this like imposter syndrome as women as a collective are like, oh, no, the patriarchy says that like abortion's bad, so I guess abortion's bad. And I guess I won't even bother like trying to say that abortion's not bad because it's not going to make any difference anyway. I'm just a little woman. Like, what would I know? You do know. Like, you're a bad bitch. Manifest that bad bitch energy. You are powerful in yourself. And if we all band together, gosh, who knows what change we could bring.
Yeah, I'm so about that. And also just in hearing the language and this conversation, I'm just pro-choice, pro-life. You know, I'm positive this has been discussed before, but what horrific language to have our minds indoctrinated to go to and use. No one is actually anti-pro-choice in a context of like any fucking thing else. Like everybody's pro-choice, like literally full stop, you know, like let's forget that we're talking about abortion for like a split second, but like nobody's anti-pro-choice. So like that concept is like, wait, what? And then like, and then pro-life. No one is anti-fucking pro-life. You know, like both of these are like pitted on themselves in these opposite directions underneath this one umbrella of abortion where like, okay, well, in this like specific instance, pro-life specifically means this. And like anybody who's not pro-life is, you know, sinful or whatever the connotation is put on it. But like, that's bullshit. Nobody is, minus the Hitler here and there, nobody's pro-murder, you know? Like,
I totally agree. Imagine if you said you were anti-life. Yeah.
And that's actually kind of what I'm getting at is like in like that comedic way of like maybe trying to shift this narrative. Maybe we need to take on like flip it and just be like, yeah, I'm pro murder. What are you pro murder? Like really like drive it in there. Like, no, like that's not what it is.
That's a really good point.
Stupid. And it's language.
Say, though, that to play devil's advocate for like a hot sec, because I feel slightly uncomfortable playing this advocate, but they do, like, a lot of these people like truly in their hearts believe that this is murder, and the law says like we can't murder, and morality says we can't murder. And so to them it's like they are watching the government legalize murder. And I don't agree that it's murder. I don't believe that is a sentient thing at that point. I believe a cow that they had for lunch is a lot more sentient, but to them, like, that must be so scary. That must be so concerning. And I have thought about it a lot because I come from like a really religious family, which totally supported me through this and like didn't even question it for a moment. And so like very grateful. Like they're also like super, like they sing like Mumford and Sons at their church. So they're a little more
cool
modern.
Church.
Yeah, they're a cool church. But they but they, like, I've thought it because I'm from such a religious family, I myself am not religious, but it's made me think a lot about like, how do I talk to someone from that community that I'm from like, how do we have a conversation over this divide? Because what's the problem is that there is an inherent like disagreement over when life begins and what life is like. Well, for me as a vegan, I'm like, well, you're killing all these other animals, so it's like a whole other thing.
Oh my gosh, I'm vegan too.
Oh, so is Abba.
we're all here in the same room. Yeah.
So I'm just like a little struggling on that point, but the problem is that there's this inherent disagreement over when life begins, and so often I come to this point where I'm like, is there ever a place where we can talk about this and come to an agreement across these beliefs?
Totally. And with that, there's this hierarchy of species, therefore, and that, if we go down that hole, which is like
whole other
human lives should be considered life, and therefore we shouldn't murder it. But that's a really valid point, and you're right. It is the viewpoint that this is considered murder. There's just to no knowledge that I know of, there's no clear, well-known support that then comes if you do choose to have that baby and not murder. So like it's setting that child up for who knows what kind of life.
I would also say that like these people who are fighting for like the illegalization of abortion are not doing much in the realms of like supporting like social services and preparing people for parenthood in any other way. And so these children are just put in the system, like people who are forced to have these children that they aren't prepared for or can't, like, just for whatever reason, can't care for them, are put in the system. And like, as a family that's also like foster family, I've seen that side of it. And I
absolutely love, like, sorry. I absolutely love how candidly you two are talking about this. And like, actually just thank you for talking so candidly, because I have that thought so much about, I can so understand why somebody would think that abortion is actually wrong and why somebody would think it was murder. I don't, but I can really understand why somebody would think that. And I can also really understand why somebody wouldn't want to go through that. I would definitely rather not go through that. It's not something that people are like looking forward to ever. It's so, I really want to know, which I hope you can find some abortion expert to have on this show, because I really want to know how we can have a conversation. And I think a lot of the time as well, people who are pro-choice versus pro-life actually have really, really similar opinions and views on this topic. And we might even have the same opinion as each other, but we express it with like different language. And the language of pro-choice and pro-life, I definitely think pits women against each other, or pits womb owners against each other as like want a baby versus don't want a baby. And that's not true. That's like just not the case, because you might want a baby and you just don't want it right now.
Totally.
Like that's not, and I have this thought a lot because I love that you've brought this up. I'm so passionate about animal rights, which I won't go into to spare the listeners. But I like totally believe that eating animals is very, very wrong. And so then sometimes I catch myself thinking like, oh, then why is abortion right? But there's just something about it that I do think it's right. I think it's okay.
Well, there's these levels here, just to be clear. It might vary on opinion. Like, for me personally, it's not so much that eating animals is wrong. It's the system that has been created of how we currently eat animals that is wrong.
That's a good point. Yeah.
And the torture and the hormones and just the entire factory farming aspect that is negligent and wrong. And in this world, we're talking, Christian values, whatever. All these things tie in, like whether we see it or not. Like how we treat one life form ends up affecting others. And I can see, moving back to your point, Amanda, I can see how abortion being seen as murder, which I'm in the South. I know these things. I know these views. It still doesn't mean, in my opinion, that someone having done something that is going to negatively impact their lives, if they so see it that way, that if there is an out to do otherwise, that they should be punished for the rest of their lives and potentially punish someone else. Somewhere in my brain, though this is not a great likening to, but I have this likening of like, it's like somebody who texts while driving. Like, this is a dangerous thing. You shouldn't do it. And like, just be like, you also like there's like the option of harming people. I don't know. This is probably not the best analogy. It'll probably derail things. We can skip this part, but it's like, you shouldn't necessarily get paid every time. Like, that's a little bit more reckless, I guess, reality.
But I think that actually is a good analogy, because people think that having sex unprotected is like reckless. Like, people who think that there's often that argument that like, oh, but you know, you didn't have to have sex. Like, you didn't have to get pregnant.
Right. We didn't have to drive to go to the grocery store. Yeah. Like,
like, you know, I didn't want to get pregnant. That's the point. I didn't mean to.
Yeah. I also think like to say like, well, you didn't have to have sex.
No, that's a really good point, Amanda. I know where you were going. It's taking away this idea that like sex is not something carnal and primal and an absolute necessity in ourselves. Yes. Like that's separating.
That's that word again, carnal.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, yes. There was some intention.
It's like denying this like the most inherent piece of ourselves. It's like where we came from and what we will leave is all through like our sexuality. Well, I guess not necessarily if you choose to adopt, so maybe not what you leave, but you came from it. And it's a huge part of like being an animal, being alive, being a human. And so like, yes, maybe depending on your beliefs, like there's certain times when it's an appropriate thing to do, but you know, not everyone has the same beliefs. And that's the beautiful thing about this like huge globalized world. I think that when I hear that retort, it's like, well, I'm human and some higher power like gave me this urge, so I'm going to enjoy it.
Well, like looping back to where the patriarchy plays into this and having that knowledge, like what about your body is promoting of like knowing ourselves, knowing what's going on our bodies. Mm-hmm. It's just very simply like when we don't have those and we're not taught that these are fundamental needs that we have, like we're taught, you know, like food, water, clothing, shelter. Mm-hmm. Sexual desire isn't included in that, when in fact, if there was anything else to be included, like that's in there. Like that is like literally a part of ourselves. Like babies, children, little children, before they ever know what sex is, like they touch themselves. Like there's like these like just pieces mm-hmm. of us, you know, like other animals are not taught necessarily how to have sex. They might be taught, you know, like how to like show off and like, you know, do the bird dances or, you know, whatever is kind of more learned, but there's still just this like programmed in to our brains, literally on the same capacity that water, food, air is. Yes, it's a little less of that need. We won't stop breathing, but we will stop reproducing, which is that's death. You know, that's its own very carnal need. And so from like the start, our building blocks, whether you want to put it on patriarchy or whatever else, our building blocks have not taught us that this is a carnal part of ourselves and therefore needs to be learned and respected and given time and thoughtful consideration and education. Therefore, you know, we learn so much about what to put in our bodies in terms of food, but we don't have any knowledge or education of how to treat our sexual selves. That's where we've inserted ourselves. What My Sex Bio aims to try to be is like that reflection. But
yeah, I absolutely love the work that you do. And the only other point that I would love to make on that, which you've basically already made, but just to make it super clear to anyone listening, it is not your fault that you don't understand how your body works. Like you were never taught, and it's nothing to be ashamed of that you don't know how your body works if you don't know. And it's nothing to be ashamed of that if somebody asked you, like, oh, do you know how what your period is? That your answer is no, because I think most people's answer is no.
Yeah.
And that's what we're trying to do, people in this space, trying to change that a little bit.
Yeah,
Totally.
we eat the best foods we have access to. We absorb the best knowledge that we have access to, and we put that into play as best we can. Like, it's not a whole lot else we can do about it. Ignorance is bliss. Once you get outside of that, then like you might have to come to terms with things, but that's fun. You know, this is an exciting thing, which is
empowering.
Yeah.
It is so fun. Like, this is the best thing in my life. Is like, I don't get paid a single cent to do about your body, but I don't see myself ever stopping to do it because it's the best thing ever.
Love it. Thank you so much for coming on and talking with us. Can you state the carnal theory that you brought for our consideration one more time today, Rachel?
Yes. So the carnal theory is this. To truly reclaim our bodies from the patriarchy, we need to understand how our bodies work, and it does not serve us, nor is it necessary to be afraid of our bodies.
So good.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
If you have any questions or insights, please reach out to us on Instagram at Carnal Theory or at My Sex Bio. You can also follow Rachel's work on Instagram at by.rachel.holt or at about.your.body or byrachelholt.com. Thank you so much. Please rate and review if you enjoyed this episode, and we'll see you next time.
Carnal Theory is produced by My Sex Bio. Our sound design is by Audrey Cohane, and our theme music by Men the Universe. My Sex Bio is an educational platform built to empower people like you to take command of your sexual biography. Follow us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, TikTok, YouTube, and Spotify at My Sex Bio. Visit our website and join our e-letter at mysexbio.org and support our work by joining our Patreon. Thank you.